running back over there, trying to get six on the IDP Show.
Welcome to the IDP Show. I'm your host, Josh Raymer, joined in the Sode Shack tonight. On my right, Adam Markham. On my left, Bobby Reynolds. Gentlemen, how are we this evening?
Doing wonderful, Josh. How are we doing?
Doing good. Bobo, how are you, man?
I'm good, Josh. I got to say, though, I lied to you a couple weeks ago.
Did you?
I was on my best behavior with Nate Tice when he was on. That was a lie.
This is going to be your best behavior?
I was on pretty good behavior with
Nice.
I'm definitely on my best behavior tonight.
Tonight is your best behavior. That's what I like to hear, because just like last time we came to you all, we are not alone in the Sode Shack tonight. No, sir. We are joined in the virtual Sode Shack all the way from sunny Los Angeles. You know him from Game Day View, NFL.com, and the Around the NFL podcast. It's Gregg Rosenthal. Gregg, how are you, my friend?
What is happening? Love this setup.
What is it in LA today, Greg? Like 77, sunny.
Don't even tell us.
Yeah, it was like high 60s. So we definitely, like in the morning, walking the kids to school, definitely had them in sweatshirts because it's like low 60s, a little chilly. But yeah, you guys look nice and toasty. I think you're wearing a shirt that has my likeness on it. So that's a first for me doing a podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you ever been on a show where you're staring at your own face from another man's chest?
No, I like it, though. That's from our guy, Alexis Frederick Frost. People should check out his books. We're not getting a cut of any merch, so someone should be. It's a sore subject.
Yeah, we have long, as Around the NFL listeners, derided the fact that you guys don't have merch. It's a shame. It's a travesty. And so I got with our boy Alexis to remedy that and have a collection of shirts. Wow. And of course, as Greg mentioned, this is The Boss, and it's a Office Space reference. So, Greg, I don't know if you used to demand TPS reports from Dan and Mark when you were their boss, but if not, you should have. I think you could have worn that moniker well.
The further I get away from being anyone's boss, the more horrifying my behavior in those years seems. I was a dick. You know, I was not a nice boss, and it's much nicer not being the boss.
I was going to say, probably feels good, you know, not to have that burden of expectation on you.
Yeah, Josh is a dick too to me. And
yeah,
come on now, guys.
I could see that. I could see that. He's threatened because I just quote met you, Bobby, right? And you've got like a Southern Nick Sirianni vibe going. I think that would be intimidating for him.
I'll take it.
I love that. Hey, Nick Sirianni's like low-key very handsome. So
yeah, Bob's hot.
Yeah, I think this is a comment on your hotness, and we're here for it. So Greg, we appreciate you joining the show tonight. We could sit here and talk hotness all night long. Jimmy G might be coming to my beloved Indianapolis Colts. Folks, that's only an upgrade in terms of how handsome our quarterback is. We started with a bridge troll in Andrew Luck, migrated up to redheaded stepchild in Carson Wentz.
Migrated up? I don't know about that.
I mean, come on now.
I don't know.
Well, they both aren't lookers, as my
I
brother
think
would
Luck's
say.
way hotter.
Oh, come on now.
I think the real problem is like Carson Wentz wasn't an upgrade in terms of how he played compared to Jacoby Brissett. I'd still take my guy Jacoby.
Awesome.
This is what I said all along was going to get these other quarterbacks. I was like, we had Jacoby Brissett. Do we forget this dude beat the Chiefs in like prime time when they had Mahomes? Anyways, we'll see where they go. But we're having you on tonight in the midst of what has been probably the craziest week that I can remember, at least in recent NFL history, Greg, to talk about what else but defensive free agents. Free agency begins next week, and we're having some moves that have been made in anticipation of free agency ramping up. And so as we come into this period now where we're going to have players signing new deals, guys landing with new teams, guys re-signing with their old teams, we want to give you, the listener, a rundown of where some of these top defensive free agents are going to land, how they might fare with their new teams. Are they going to get overpaid and potentially bust? Are there some values to be had out there? And Greg is the man with the definitive Top 101. Check it out, NFL.com/Top 101. And Greg, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity with the affectionately named Wesseling Bowl that we had between the Bengals and Rams back a few weeks ago. Of course, Chris Wesseling, famously a Cincinnati Bengals fan who divorced his team. There was a dossier involved. It was a very messy divorce. And then Lakeisha Wesseling, his wife, was a Rams fan going back to the St. Louis days and probably beyond even that. So a really amazing moment to have the Rams and Bengals meet in the Super Bowl a year after we lost Wes to cancer. And of course, this project, the Top 101 Free Agents, something that you used to do with Wes. Some of my favorite moments on the podcast, Greg, were you and Chris debating where you had guys and what guys you all fought over. Just some great podcast fodder. So between the Wesseling Bowl and then doing this list this year, what kind of memories has it kicked up of your friend Chris Wesseling?
No, I appreciate you asking. You saying that. You just talking just kicked up memories of us just arguing about players from the moment I met him, which was on AOL Instant Message, in 2008 or something. And that was the basis of our friendship, was essentially arguing over football players, because we didn't actually meet each other for 3 years. Wow. He was just like the best football mind that I had ever hired there. That's how we originally met. And Rotoworld didn't have much money, so we never flew him up. He just worked for us from Tybee Island. And there's no one I loved arguing with more, who stood to his beliefs more, who had strong takes, who had a great feel for football, and never took it too personally. Not personally. He would stand behind it and we'd get after it, but it never had anything to do with whether we liked each other or not. So yeah, when we got to the NFL, doing the 101 was always fun. It was a multi-week process. One thing I noticed as we started getting older, and certainly after he did cancer, had his first bout with cancer, it's we spent a little less time arguing. We realized maybe we don't need to be arguing quite as much. Let's have our players that we really believe in. We kind of know what the other guy's going to do somewhat anyways. We'll stake our claim. We'll average it out. We'll talk it out, but maybe don't spend as much time just bickering like crazy over Marcus Mariota's future.
I just picture screaming matches in the newsroom of no, Marcus Mariota should be 13, not 16, There
was a lot of texts, a lot of instant messages, and a lot on the podcast and going back and forth. There was always those guys that you just I'll just give it to him. If he believes it this much, you just give it to him, and vice versa.
Yeah, you don't care that much to sit there and argue. Bobby, I know one of the things I loved about Chris was he, more than anybody else I've ever met, he was like a NFL football encyclopedia. Mm-hmm. He was not only a brilliant analyst who had such keen understanding and insight into the game of football, but he understood it within a historical context and perspective that just made him such a unique voice in the football landscape.
Yeah, man. And the cool thing about this whole podcast thing, and we're small beans in the, grand scheme of things, but if it hadn't been for Around the NFL podcast, we wouldn't exist.
Nope.
We wouldn't have been doing this in a shed for, 3 years now. And Chris is a lot of the reason of that. I have not been as plugged in over the years, especially early on in the years, as much as Josh has. But if it hadn't been for y'all, Mark, Dan, I don't know that we would be here doing this. And, the other end of it, kind of too, that's cool, is that there's some other podcasts that have spawned because of us. So this is Greg's got much more fame than we do, but we're not doing it for the fame and the wealth. We just love talking football, getting together, and encouraging others to do the same. And I feel like that was kind of what Wes's vibe was.
Yeah, Greg, I know Dan always talks about Mad Dog Rousseau was a big influence on you all, wanting to get into this kind of medium of talking about football. And Bobby's right. Listening to you all, listening to the Fantasy Footballers and the Athletic Football Show and all these great football podcasts out there, have helped, kind of pave the path for other podcasts to come along behind you all. And, Chris is forever part of that legacy now. You guys record in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio, which is amazing. I mean, that has to be just such a cool moment for you guys to, not only when that was unveiled, but for that to be the home of, all NFL Network podcasts now. That's an amazing legacy to an amazing man.
Yeah, it's surreal. I mean, hearing you guys even talk about starting the podcast partly because of listening and stuff, that's surreal too. That is amazing. Doing the studio with his name on it every day. It's heavy, but it's also beautiful. And like he appreciated the people that were in it for the love of it. And I think we always were trying to hold on to the love of the game. And, you know, as I get older, I'm just like a cynical husk of a person with no emotions inside that's just trying to gobble up power and money. And hearing this kind of stuff, I'm kidding, grounds me. But for real, like thinking back, like your show gets to it because, man, you're an IDP show. An IDP is not for the faint of heart. Like I knew when I started at Roto World in 2004, if I wanted an article to not be read that much, I'd write about IDP.
Yep. Amen, brother. Sure. You're speaking our language now.
It's us.
You know, it was tough, and I was into it. Still does fantasy radio and still is doing great. And man, like I got deep into the IDP world for about 5 or 6 years, and you guys like you are too tough for me now. So I don't know why you're having me on, because you guys know way more than I do.
Well, we appreciate that, and
we don't. By the way, just to clear that up.
It's, you know, this is
I remember like I had an early pick on Gary Brackett or something with the Colts. I was trying to think of a good Colts player. Brackett was a nice IDP player back in the day.
He was good.
Like that's where I was at. Yeah.
Yeah, Cato June had a little run there with the Colts. I was a big Cato June fan, but yeah, this is definitely a niche that we always used to open our show with diehards, degenerates, and lovers of defensive football, because we are getting into the weeds a little bit here of fantasy, but you know, we like showing some love to the guys on the defensive side, and in the spirit of, you know, Chris Wesseling and y'all's debates over this list, and in the spirit of our love for IDP, let's jump into it, Greg. Let's jump into the list here. And one player that did not make it through to free agency from the Tennessee Titans, and he is staying down there in Nashville, is edge Harold Landry. Signs a 5-year, $87.5 million deal that includes $52.5 million guaranteed. Greg, I'm curious, as you look across the landscape at who's left out there, I thought Landry would be the highest paid defensive player in terms of guaranteed money. Do you think there are other people out there who may surpass him? What do you see as far as his deal in terms of where it sits in the landscape?
I mean, that would have been a good bet to put down somewhere, because you might win it here. I mean, he just got $52 million guaranteed. That's up there or above some of the best edge rushers in the NFL. In terms of guarantees, though, I feel like J.C. Jackson and Carlton Davis got a shot here. There haven't been great cornerbacks to hit the free agent market too often lately, and those are two guys in their prime. I would think Jackson would get more. He's number 2 on my list total, but that money that Landry got, in addition to the Mike Williams contract with the Chargers, I think was just like a warning shot and it totally makes sense that guys are gonna get better deals than we've ever seen in this free agency class, because it's been a couple years since teams have been able to spend, and now they are, and the salaries always go up. So it makes sense that a Mike Williams is making $20 million a year, but 2 years, even last year, certainly, but even 2-3 years ago, a guy like Mike Williams and Harold Landry, the market was not going to support them making that much.
Yeah, and Addy, one of the things that our boy John Macri over at PFF pointed out is that Landry, at least for IDP, has truly been a volume monster. Like, since entering the league in 2018, no other edge has played more snaps in that time. So the amount of opportunity he was going to get would be difficult to replicate on another team. He was sort of in this like perfect situation with the Titans. Hasn't really played that well. He's earned just a 59.7 pass rush grade since 2018. So this was a dude that we always sort of liked for IDP. I like that he's staying with the Titans. Do you see his outlook changing at all now that he's signed this massive deal?
No, I mean, I think you can kind of expect the same production for Harold Landry going forward. I wouldn't expect him to ever be like a 15 sack type guy, but yeah, I mean, he's going to still get tons of snaps. He's going to get 1,000 snaps a year, probably. I think he's done that, 3 years in a row now?
Yep.
Or something close to that. So, yeah, he's one of the few guys in the league that have done that from the edge position. So, yeah, I mean, they paid him handsomely. He's still, 25. I mean, so yeah, I think you love to see guys, putting up 12 sacks when they're 25.
Yep.
Because we know he's going to enter that grown ass man stage here soon.
We have to introduce Greg to this phrase. So, Greg, we have a theory that is defensive linemen and offensive linemen, but mainly these like big, burly defensive tackles and edge rushers. Think of like a Cam Jordan from the Saints as they near like that 30-year-old kind of cliff where most guys, at least value-wise, kind of fall off. These defensive linemen enter into grown-ass man strength. And suddenly they are transformed. And it's not like the cliff comes for them at 30. Oh, no, it's a new peak. So if you hear us talking about grown-ass man strength,
become more crafty and stuff.
Yeah, we don't have access to that as 30-year-olds ourselves, but these NFL...
we've heard about it.
Yeah, we've heard through the grapevine that maybe it's something these guys can tap into. So Harold Landry staying with the Tennessee Titans. And for IDP purposes, I think it's the status quo, like Addy said. But Chandler Jones, Greg, is a player that I'm so interested in because for IDP, he gets banged a little bit because of his positional eligibility. He's not quite as valuable when he's listed as an outside linebacker. But I loved in your write-up that you said, even though he may be a little bit past his absolute peak as a pass rusher, he can still juice up any defensive line on a short-term deal. So do you like Chandler Jones as an addition on a team where he has a chance to make an impact?
I do, but he's like a huge boomer bust guy. I think as a free agent, and I would think as a IDP guy too, depending on your scoring. Like even at his best, he was never a huge QB hits and sacks guy. He was like had kind of a low QB hits for the amount of sacks that he would. 2 good years left, or he could have 1 good year left, or he could be on the downside here because I don't think he was quite the same player a year ago or in that first month before he tore his pec. That was the injury, right? In 2020. That first month was like one of the worst months of Chandler Jones's career. And even if you look at last year, after that first week where he just popped off, he was kind of up and down. So to me, he's a boomer bust guy. I put him high just because I think there's a chance that you're getting like an elite pass rusher, and any chance for that for even just 1 year is worth so much.
Yeah, Bobby, that's what I was going to say. Even if Chandler Jones is boom bust, the potential to get some juice in your pass rush, this is something these NFL teams value a lot.
Yeah, I could see him going to a little bit of an older team that, brings in some veteran type DNs, like a Kansas City might be a decent spot.
Be nice.
Think about this one too. I didn't realize this. Who had more sacks last year, Chandler Jones or Marcus Golden?
Oh, Marcus Golden.
Marcus Golden had a half sack more. He had 11 sacks, and Chandler Jones had 10 and a half. And Greg's right. You take out Chandler Jones's 5 sacks in week 1, he has a 5.5 sack year, which is just okay. I do love his 6 forced fumbles on the year.
That is nice.
Yeah, I love what Greg said. He is very boom bust at age 32. He's definitely on the backside of his career, and really needs to go somewhere to shine for what? Maybe 1 or 2 more years.
Yeah.
Go somewhere. Maybe does he have a ring yet? Probably not.
I don't think.
Did he get one with New England? Maybe one. I don't know, but maybe not.
Okay.
I think he got one in 2014 because he was on that team. That was before he walked into a police station while under the influence of synthetic marijuana, which is like not where you want to walk. Like go somewhere else. Like don't go to the police station. Go home or just walk around. And that was that was the end of his Patriots career. And I think that was after the 2014 season, maybe a year or two later.
Sheesh, blast from the
It's
past.
like the number one rule of drugs. Stay away from police stations.
Don't walk into the police station.
I feel bad because he was like looking for help. Something was not going right there. He was struggling. So it's good. He got a monster contract though. He was smart to force his way out of there ultimately because it worked out well for him.
Yeah, it seems like, Addy, this could be a situation like a Von Miller acquisition for the Rams, where just a team that feels like they're on the precipice but needs a little bit of juice from an older pass rusher.
Yeah, it's a good call because, I mean, Chandler Jones has 107 and a half career sacks. He's done that in 139 games. That's
Hall
second
of Fame
most
stuff, at least to get talked about for it, possibly.
That second most among active players. That's only behind Von Miller. He's got 115 and a half, and he's done that in 150 games. So Chandler Jones, man, he deserves a little more respect. Yeah, I mean, 47 pressures. That wasn't great. 9.8% pressure rate. 14.6 win rate. That's even those aren't like anything that'll blow you away. Those are both above average.
A little bit above average.
They're both above average.
I think it supports Gregg's point here that he may be past his peak, but he's absolutely still got some juice left.
But dude, if you can get he got 5 sacks a game. If you can still do that, I mean,
you're not off the cliff.
There's not a lot of guys that can do that.
Yeah.
What a change Arizona's gone through in about a day.
Yeah.
Chandler Jones, obviously they've known about, but now Jordan Hicks being gone, hopefully Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons. Shout out to Nate Tice for #Zaven season.
Yeah.
He'll understand what that means.
Going.
Speaking of merch, we need to get some merch on
that. Is that next season? Because it wasn't last season. Really.
Oh yeah, it's coming. Get ready.
It's a sore subject, Gregg. When Keim's coming out and saying that he's got 2 tall ash trees in the middle of his defense.
You got a Zaven guy and a Simmons guy over here. It's been a
Keim's a liar. Keim is a big
got to get Jordan
liar.
Hicks out, so as our boy Macri said, they can take another linebacker at 23 and then not play him. So
that's one of those things. I was all excited to watch that. You're in August. You're like watching a preseason game when they play 15 snaps together. You're like, oh, this is gonna be cool. I'm gonna watch this. Yeah. And then you don't really have too much fun watching that. He did light up my Tulane Green Wave, though. I remember in college, he destroyed them.
Yeah, that's
he was a force, man, in college. Like, he's definitely stood out. I wish they would have used him in more creative ways. I thought they could have used him like Dallas used Micah Parsons, but
yeah. So from Chandler Jones, who we have fewer questions about now at this point in his career, to a player in Randy Gregory, who sits at 16 overall for you, Gregg. This guy was an all-pro candidate, as you wrote, before suffering a calf injury in week 9, and he never quite looked the same, underwent knee surgery after the season. So you talk about gambles and boom-bust guys. Randy Gregory feels like another one on that list that if you get him and he's right, this could potentially be a value in free agency, but the floor could fall out with Randy Gregory as well.
Yeah, I like him more as a free agent than as a possible fantasy guy because he's never played more than 550 snaps in his career. Yeah. And I don't know, at this point he's almost 30. I don't know if you can expect that. That said, his snaps on a per snap basis the last 2 years, he was really good in 2020 in like the 250 snaps he had then too. And even though he wasn't quite the same when he came back from the injury, he did have one good game, if I remember right, but he was very effective per snap. He was wrecking shop. If they had him and Lawrence together at balling at the same time, they would have been great. He's just someone that's had so many problems over his career. I feel like he has more value to the Cowboys than he would elsewhere. Mm-hmm. They know him. He's been there. It's comfortable. I'd be a little concerned. Just like, you got to keep this guy on the field. You got to keep him kind of on the straight and narrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, Gregg, and it seems like the Cowboys are kind of doing this thing where they're letting the more expensive, bigger name guy go to keep the lesser known free agent. Rumblings, they're going to keep Michael Gallup and let Amari Cooper go. Rumblings, they might let DeMarcus Lawrence go. Would it make sense to bring back Randy Gregory, especially if you're planning to cut DeMarcus Lawrence and save about $8 million in cap?
Well, and also it has a lot to do with where you're going to play Micah Parsons next year. You're going to leave him on the edge or move him back to his typical linebacker role. Now, no Jalen Smith. How old is Leighton Vander Esch at this point?
And that neck just worries us to death.
He's a free agent. It hurt me to not put him on the list. He was just outside the top 101, at least the initial list. And I remember watching a game with Wes we talked about earlier, and 2018, them playing the Saints on Thursday night. We were like, man, Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, this is the future. This is the future of the linebacker position. So things change fast. Now you're right. That's a great point about Micah Parsons, that's why they probably only are going to keep either Lawrence or Gregory. But to me, it's like, that's not a hard choice. DeMarcus Lawrence is literally the best player on the Dallas Cowboys over the last 5 years, along with Dak Prescott, and a leader and a badass. Like, I actually just talked myself out of keeping Gregory. He should go somewhere else.
There we go.
Dallas is maybe not a good environment for him. I mean, there's a lot going on in Dallas. I don't know if that's like the place to get your head on straight. They kind of let you do anything. So I changed my mind.
All right, Gregory, you're out. Lawrence, you're staying. Micah Parsons, you're still going to be used in that hybrid role, but you're also going to be used at.
They're holding him back.
Well.
They're holding him back there.
Do you want him to make the full transition to edge, Micah Parsons?
Yes, kind of. I mean, I think that's the more valuable position. He was like a baller at it.
Yeah,
he was still like literally one of the best at it.
Edge rushers in the league as a rookie who was drafted as a linebacker.
Wait, for IDP though, what happened last year must have been like the best possible scenario because you got both. Am I wrong?
It was, I mean, there was a stretch there. It was pretty wild. He had like 84 total tackles and like 13 sacks.
Yeah.
It was one of the weirdest stat years. Like,
and there was a 4 or 5 week span towards the later part of the season where he was averaging 20-25 a game.
Yeah, he was winning you weeks.
He slowed down towards the end a little bit, but he was amazing.
That's a great question.
You get banged a little bit depending on your scoring, because if you're tackle heavy, Parsons is devalued a little bit because he's not going to rack up like 150 tackles. But if you're in a big play league, which is what we tend to play in, that overvalues sacks and tackles for loss, you do want those guys like a Parsons, like a Devin White, who have the opportunity to rack up huge sack numbers. Because those guys are week winners. That's a 35, 45 point type of game that can just swing a game for you.
So let's ask Greg, smartest in the business. Randy Gregory, you're going to leave him on the edge and let him play, with his hand in the ground, or are you going to try to move him back to a typical linebacker role?
You talking about Gregory or Parsons?
Oh, Parsons. Sorry, not Gregory. Yeah.
Oh no, I think you gotta have his edge snaps as a major part of his diet. It's just too valuable. Now, can he have the flexibility where you can move him around a little and mess with opposing offenses? Sure, but I feel like you got to just see if he looked like one of the best edges in the league from the jump. So you just got to see if he can keep that going. Even if you can be creative with him, don't get too cute.
Yeah.
And Dallas could suck next year.
Yeah.
Their defense could be even worse.
But play Parsons, as a traditional linebacker, first down, second and third, let him get after the quarterback.
Right.
Bring in some sub packages. I agree. So let's move to another player here, Greg, that has just baffled IDP managers for 2 years. This is Haason Reddick. He is number 23 on your list. And he, as you wrote, over the past 2 seasons, 23.5 sacks, Greg. We thought this guy was going to have a huge market going into free agency. Of course, the cap goes down. I think that hurt a lot of guys in his similar boat. But he has to go take a 1-year prove-it deal from his former college coach, Matt Rule. And a year later, after some more great sack production, here we are again with Haason Reddick. What type of market is this guy going to have now, coming off 23.5 sacks in 2 seasons, and with the cap having gone up about $25 million?
Yeah, better one for sure. He's one of the guys who did the 1-year prove-it deals, and it's going to pay off for him. If I had to guess, I think he's probably getting $8, $9, $10 million a year, something like a 3 for 30, a 3 for 36. I think there's this feeling, and he also might blow that out of the water. It only takes 1 or 2 teams to truly see him. He hasn't been a guy again that like has the total pressures that matches with that sacks. His speed is crazy. He's so light. I mean, he is about as light an edge player as there is in the NFL. Right. And that's why I think that's why he didn't get the money is GMs look at that and they're like, what am I going to do with a 235-pound guy against against the run, and that can affect snap counts and everything. But at this point, I think you can kind of start to throw away the first 3 years of his career. He's proven this is who he is, and I made the mistake ranking him too low a year ago. I might have done it again. This year. I might not have given him enough credit, because he kind of proved at the very least he's got this skill set, and that's worth a lot.
Yeah, Addy, 13.4 points per game last season, 44 total pressures on 852 snaps for Haason Reddick.
So
are we buying in on this
pressures though?
Yeah, it's not.
It's
a low pressure rate. Yeah, are we buying in on this guy for?
I think so. Yeah, I'm with Greg. I mean, those first 3 years in Arizona, they weren't using him properly. He wasn't playing edge. He wasn't rushing the quarterback. He was playing like like a normal linebacker. So yeah, I mean, the last 2 years when he's been, as a, on the line as an edge, he's gotten 11.5 sacks last year, and he got 12. Yeah, 12 this year.
He's like a poor man's Ngakoue. Now that I think about it, because you just can't. Any team that really value, like the Patriots, the Patriots would never sign him. So it's like any team that really values edge setting is not gonna sign him. But there's plenty of teams that would.
Yeah, he could provide some juice, I feel like, Bobo, to a team that needs just pure pass rush.
What about Reddick to Minnesota? The whole DJ Wanham experience kind of didn't work out last year. Anthony Barr is going to be gone, who kind of plays a little bit similar role.
Yeah, it'd be fine. They could use him.
I think probably the thing that helped Reddick a little bit as well is playing opposite,
Brian Burns, one of the best edges in the entire league, right?
Yep.
So it'd help him outside of, playing opposite Daniil next year. It could help a little bit. Maybe have a similar year.
I mean, I think most teams that need an edge should be in on Haason Reddick. I mean, he's one of the probably youngest edge rushers, or with the most upside, I would say. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of guys with upside on this list, just because most of those guys get retained.
It's true. But the pure edge guys like Derek Barnett, there aren't many young guys. It's mostly Nwosu, who I underranked and heard about.
Like him. Yeah, we like him.
We'll get to a lot of people, but yeah.
Yeah, let's get into that. That was the one I was so curious about, Greg, because you mentioned this specifically on the show that you guys did, talking about your list, was that you're like, all right, people, I'm going to move Uchenna Nwosu up. So did you hear from Chargers? Like, who was in your mentions saying that you ranked Uchenna Nwosu too low?
Multiple people. One that works for the Chargers. One, a few. It's just one of those that's like, oh, shoot, he's going to get a $50 million contract, and I have him ranked way too low. And this is why, you don't stay up all night the night before it's due, and then you're taking your family on like a 3-day weekend the next day before you send it off, because you need that 2.0. Nwosu needs to go up. He really is a good, anyone with that kind of first step and is young and got better throughout his career is going to get a nice contract. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be from the Chargers necessarily, but I think he's one of those guys that at the combine, you just know their agent was putting out there that 2 or 3 teams are in on him. And usually that stuff's right. So I think he's going to get a nice deal.
Yeah, I agree. And you can just say it was Daniel Jeremiah that was giving him flack.
No, I wish. I did follow up actually with him though, when I heard this stuff, and he was totally on board that he's a good player.
Yeah. So Addy, you mentioned we're in on Uchenna. You've famously kind of pounded the drum for this guy. We saw sort of the expanded role that we were hoping for last year, starting 15 games. Do we think that the best is yet to come for Uchenna Nwosu?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, he is a little undersized. He's not like most of these, traditional star edge rushers. They're 6'4", 6'5". He's more like in the Everson Griffin mold. But yeah, I like him a lot. I mean, 64.3 overall PFF grade, 68.5 pass rush grade, 40 pressures on the year. That's a 9.8% pressure rate. He has a career pressure rate of 11.8%. So, I mean, that's about 3% more than league average. 12.3 pass rush win rate. He's a good ball player. I mean, all the stats pretty much back that up. But also, he's in Los Angeles, where they're always kind of weird with the usage and stuff. I just don't think that's the best environment for a lot of defensive players to thrive. They're weird with the usage. I'm excited to see him get a fresh start.
Yeah. seems like Bobby, he's one of those guys, like Greg said, that's going to sign a monster deal.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're looking up being like, where they kept this guy for the past 3 seasons, right?
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, Joshy, but the Indianapolis Colts have the most cap going into 2022.
Yes. So after getting the Washington Commanders to take his entire salary for 2022, we actually have the most cap space in the league now.
So Uchenna to the Colts.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Do I
He
want
would fit
to maybe
perfect?
He would. And that's one of those players I would love for us to break the bank on. You know, we've been looking for that edge rush combo. I love Kwity Paye. We're all Kwity Paye fans at this table. But we've been looking for that dynamite combo off the edge since the Robert Mathis, Dwight Freeney years. And so pairing a young up-and-coming guy with a second-year player in Kwity Paye, sign me up.
And DeForest Buckner.
And DeForest Buckner. It helps to have DeForest Buckner, an all-pro, there in the middle of your defensive line. But this is the year I am hoping Chris Ballard opens up the checkbook and actually goes and pays some guys. Who's going to be throwing the ball? That remains to be seen. But
bring back Jacoby.
There we go.
Yeah.
Bring back. See, we finally have another Jacoby believer
or
in the
Teddy. We can bring Teddy in.
I'm not even a Jacoby believer necessarily. I'm just like, I can't believe Washington gave up anything for Wentz, because to me, there's not going to be a much of a difference, if any, between Wentz and Jacoby or whoever they bring in. There's actually a decent amount of those 1B guys that are okay, that aren't going to be exciting, but they're not going to be any worse than Wentz. They might be better.
Yeah, this felt like, as a Colts fan and sort of reading the tea leaves, this seemed like a Jim Irsay was like, get this dude out of this building immediately, Chris Ballard.
What's Washington doing? Did they not do any digging? I mean, there's been like rumors of like Wentz being hard to deal with for a little bit now, right?
Yeah, and you read Zach Kiefer's story for The Athletic. The problem stretched all the way back to the summer before the season even started. Before Wentz broke his foot, sprained both ankles, didn't get vaccinated, threw a left-handed interception that cost him the Titans game. I could go on and on.
Lost week 18.
Yeah, if we want to really relive the agony.
That was an epic clip, that interception.
Yeah. So
for real, that's like butt fumble status.
Yeah, especially since it pretty much cost us the playoffs. Such good times. But I feel bad for Ballard. I think he's a great GM, but it seemed like last year Frank Reich was like, please, Chris, we got to go get my dude. And Jim Irsay was like, yeah, Chris, go get Wentz. Let's give him a shot. And then this year he's caught in the Irsay hurricane of like, get this guy out of here. So I feel bad for Chris.
He apologized. You see where he apologized?
Yeah, Reich apologized to Jim Irsay. He's like, my bad, bro. That's
you hate to do that. You
hate
to have to apologize to the old boss, man.
Yeah. Sorry about that. That's on me. So anyways, I hope the Colts break out the checkbook, and I would love to welcome Uchenna Nwosu to Indianapolis. But let's move to linebacker, Greg. Linebacker is the glamorous position. You probably picked up on this in your short time in the IDP kind of inner circle, but folks love them some linebackers. And of course, the huge news that was made official today was the Seattle Seahawks releasing Bobby Wagner after a 10-year career with them, frees up about $16 million in cap space. I checked right before we came out here and saw, Greg, that you had slotted him in at 16 overall between Randy Gregory and Jadeveon Clowney. He's your highest rated linebacker. What type of market do you think Bobby Wagner will have now with his surprising release?
Yeah, a good one in terms of he'll have a lot of interest. I don't think he's going to break the bank. I'm not ranking guys based on how much money they're going to make. Mm-hmm. It could be something like 2 for 18 or something, and only 12 of that's guaranteed. It's at his age, he's not going to sign a contract like Harold Landry did, obviously, but he is still a plus middle linebacker. And I do think you get a little something from a true great in his first year in a new situation. I just think it's human nature. Not that he wasn't trying his very hardest last year, but this is a Hall of Famer. Yep. There's no doubt about it. He's the leader of that Seahawks defense over the last 7 years. And I think any team that can bring in a guy that smart, that tough, that much of a leader, he's going to be crazy motivated. And as long as he's in the right system, and I'm sure, Dan Quinn could be interested, who knows? I've heard some talk that the Rams might be interested, which is weird because it doesn't fit in a few ways, but there's some buzz about that. But I think he could have a really nice bounce back year because he's like Harold Landry. He never leaves the field. His coverage maybe isn't as good as it used to be, but you're kind of signing him because he plays all 3 downs and he plays 1,000 snaps. So he'll make up in volume, I would think, anything he's lost. And he has lost, but he's still a good middle linebacker, even if he's not one of the top 3 or 4.
When you have a little bit of a decline from a Hall of Fame level of play, you're still a plus player. And Addy, this is a guy that I would put up there with Luke Kuechly, Patrick Willis, Levante David.
Oh, dude.
Eric Kendricks is like the best pure NFL linebacker of the past decade.
It's him and Kuechly.
I think so.
And Levante David,
1
I
and 2.
guess. Yeah, he belongs in the mix too, I guess. But I mean, yeah, Bobby Wagner's never not had 100 tackles in a season.
Wow.
He's been above. He put up 170 this last year, but he's been above 133 since 2016.
He had 170 tackles last year. Did that lead the league
combined? It was up there. Last year was nuts. So Foyesade Oluokun had 192.
Yep.
The tackles.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's,
like,
he's a free agent too. He's a free agent too.
We'll
and so is Devondre Campbell. Yep.
Yeah. And it's just a sec. 2 guys that, for IDP, like our eyes get as big as dinner plates here, but for real NFL purposes, unless the GM plays IDP, not exactly looking for the 190 tackle monster, but Bobby Wagner, as reliable as it comes, Addy, for IDP and for NFL defenses. This is like the dude, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you may be a little low on him, Greg. I'd bump him up the list a little bit. I mean, I think every contender should be in on this dude.
Yeah,
I did bump him up. I had him much lower initially, and then I kept thinking, no, I can't put him behind this guy. No, I can't put him behind Campbell, and I kept moving him up and up. I'm considering positional value too, more like that. That's why Teddy is so high. Quarterbacks get bumped up, but you might be onto something. I wonder if the Chargers, who have Kyzir White, free agent, might be interested too. There'll be a lot of teams that would be interested.
My Drew Tranquil shares. Hope not. But.
Yes, they would go up in flames pretty quickly. So, Greg, do you think, because that was a question I had, because when we were originally looking before you slotted him in, we were thinking somewhere we actually put him ahead of Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus Williams. But do you think the NFL values that kind of safety more than a linebacker like Bobby Wagner?
Maybe a little, not by much. Safeties are undervalued too. I mean, you look at the franchise tag, the only numbers that are lower than safeties is running backs and tight ends. So safeties don't tend to get huge numbers. I think I overrate safeties, or I value them so highly. So I end up loving those guys. I think they change so much. My thing is Bobby Wagner a plus on passing downs, which is basically 2/3 of the downs is a passing league. Not a huge one right now. Like, he's not killing you, and that's a plus for any linebacker, but that would be my concern and why he's down a little lower than those guys just compared to other positions.
Yeah, that makes sense. The guy that you had as your top linebacker, the aforementioned Devondre Campbell, this was a guy that for a long time was searching, I think, to find his right fit with an NFL team and to really get his career on track. And boy, did we ever see that with Devondre Campbell landing with the Green Bay Packers late in the summer. Like, IDP heads were like in on Chris Barnes still when Devondre Campbell signed. And then he goes out and plays at an all-pro level, Greg. What do you think? Was it just like right player, right system, right time fit with Devondre Campbell? I mean, it was like the lights came on all of a sudden.
Yeah, it was the fit. They really let him play middle linebacker, and the Falcons didn't. I always liked Devondre Campbell, so you always like it when someone kind of proves your instincts right, because, man, he flashes. It's kind of like Nwosu. When you watch Nwosu, he just moves different. He looks different, and that has value. You think that's going to show up eventually in terms of a big season. And Campbell was like that. Man, he can hit. He can do everything. He's not like amazing in coverage at that size and in his movement, but he doesn't need to be as a middle linebacker. And I think it was just he talked about it during the season. They played him as a true middle linebacker, a true guy kind of calling that defense. And I guess just him and Deion Jones as a combo sort of didn't totally make sense in that defense together because he was so much better, away from that defense.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm curious, Greg, do you think there's any chance they've signed Rodgers to this new 4-year deal? They franchise tagged Devontae Adams. Any chance the Packers bring back Devondre Campbell in your mind?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think they're the most likely team for sure. How could they not? That's been a rotating disaster for 5-6 years, that position, but even before LaFleur, but even with LaFleur. And he was perfect. Like, they had him essentially playing as like a strong side guy in Atlanta, and it was a totally different role. He was dynamic. He changed their defense. I almost would be surprised if they don't find a way to keep him, because I don't know if anyone else will fork over the kind of money that the Packers would and the Packers should. They'll find a way.
Yeah, Bobby, it seems like it just makes sense across the board for Devondre Campbell to stay in Green Bay. If he does, top 5 linebacker in redraft for you?
I was looking at the total combined tackles earlier today, and we were looking at people the likes of Jordan Brooks, who I think had the second most tackles last year, behind Foye, and then right in front of Bobby Wagner. But then I was looking at Denzel Perryman, and a lot of guys in IDP are going to look at a guy like Denzel Perryman, Devondre Campbell, and a lot of them are going to want to cash out and say, that was fun for a year. Let me see if I can get a pick or another player. I think the Packers need to treat Devondre Campbell the same way and just keep him. Just run him back again for this year. I think he was better than when Blake Martinez was there for a couple of years. Blake Martinez was a god for IDP there when he was in Green Bay for a couple of years. I mean, he was top 5 every year that he was in Green Bay. And then there was the whole weird Christian Kirksey kind of tryout, Oren Burks type of thing. But no, I'm 100% with you, Greg. I think Devondre Campbell, you got to think a lot of these teams too. I was thinking about that when we talked about Harold Landry. A lot of these teams are in a window, kind of same with Bobby Wagner. My link to him and the Rams is Wagner's got a ring with Russ, and that's cool and everything. But I think the Rams and Wagner are pretty awesome. I think Harold Landry with the Titans, they know that Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, they got AJ Brown year 3 or 4, whatever he is. Some of these teams that are looking at some of these guys that are 25, 26, 27, lock these guys up and make a run for it. Because especially when you're a team that's got a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you better hurry up and make a run for it.
Just go for it.
He's young too, and he's young, and you pay him. Like, he's never made big money, so I think if it's like a big 2-year deal, he'll be taking that.
Yeah, like his overall PFF grade of 84.7 and his coverage grade of 81.5. Those were both second among all linebackers.
So he was good for IDP and good for NFL.
That's
not always the case, but
146 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 picks. Yeah, he was a linebacker 1.
So if he comes back to the Packers, are you cashing out or are you holding for another year?
Oh, if he's back on the Packers, yeah, you run it back.
Run it back?
Yeah, for sure.
Bobby, you running it back?
Oh, heavens yes.
Let's go then. So let's move.
Let's go.
Let's go then. So another
Heavens,
IDP.
you don't hear that too often. I like
Yes,
that.
sir. Yeah. Welcome to the South, brother.
So another player that was an IDP god, Foyesade Oluokun, formerly with the Atlanta Falcons. I think given their cap situation, we don't expect him to be back with the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm curious, Greg, you have him ranked down pretty low. So he is your 77th ranked player right now. So we obviously value guys like Foyesade Oluokun very highly for IDP. It looks like for the real NFL, I wouldn't anticipate Foyesade getting a big deal from some team out there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think he's kind of like a guy like Reddick a year ago that popped up with this 1 year. It's a position that just isn't getting paid these days, off-ball linebackers, except for in very few exceptions. You're coming from Atlanta. He hits like a truck, and that's exciting. But I don't know if teams are going to be just laying down huge money for him. I mean, I loved watching him, and he came on, if I remember right, a a little bit in 2022 and started to show that potential. In kind of what Campbell's role, used to be in Atlanta. And he's a fun player. But yeah, in terms of like what he gets paid, man, these off-ball linebackers just don't seem like they get money anymore. There's so many teams that have gone too far the other way, like the Eagles, and they just like don't even care about the position. They're like the anti-Colts. Like they just like, we will, in the Packers really have been like this a little bit. We will stick anyone that we can find, like a replacement level guy, and we'll be fine at that position. And I think Oluokun will fall victim to that in terms of like making top dollar, but he'll certainly have a decent market.
Yeah, it's like TJ Edwards, Alex Singleton, and your nasty long hair. Come on down. You're the new
But it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked.
No, it hasn't.
It's kind of killed them. It's kind of killed them.
You think they would learn their lesson, but alas, not to be. Addy, Bobby brought up Denzel Perryman. I get a little bit of like, Perryman had the stink on him from the Chargers, goes to the Raiders, has a season that none of us saw coming last year before the injuries kind of derailed him late in the season. Are you in on Foye? Are you trying to buy low right now before he lands in a new spot? Or are you just selling him, offloading him, or just staying away entirely?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to sell him. I mean, just because the situation could look way different. He's never graded that well. I mean, he's
graded terribly.
Yeah, this past year was what, a 40. He was in the 40s, 45.8 this past year.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was bad.
56.6 the year before that. He's never been above a 65.7. Yeah, I mean he's actually gotten worse every single year of his career.
He's like Benjamin Buttoning his way to relevance in the NFL.
But
he was definitely making plays last year, though. You watched the Falcons game, and it was basically three players: Jarrett,
Deion Jones,
and AJ Terrell. Deion Jones kind of disappeared. It was like Oluokun, Terrell, and Jarrett, and the rest of the defense was terrible.
It's one of the many problems in Atlanta.
Still terrible.
Yeah, still terrible. Still not great. Let's keep it moving here with linebackers, Greg. And I want to bring up another player you mentioned from the Los Angeles Chargers, Kyzir White. The linebacking core for the Chargers has long been a source of frustration for IDP managers. I planted a flag on Kenneth Murray and had to basically pull that flag out of my back when he stabbed me with it. By turning in a stinker of a season in 2021. So Kyzir White actually was the better option, despite not being as flashy of a name. This is another player sort of in that Foyesade Oluokun mold of like, is anybody going to pay big money for this guy? Is he maybe a sleeper to get a bigger deal than we expect? Kind of like Uchenna Nwosu. Like, how do you see his value shaking out?
I don't know how he'll get paid. I think there will be teams interested in him, but I think he's an absolute sleeper because I think he's good. Like, I've always thought he was good. I always thought Perriman, it's like I'm not a scout, but I try to watch each game, and like White shows up. You notice him. He can do a lot of different things. That's what you need out of middle linebackers, inside, off-ball linebackers now. He can do everything, and he never quite had the opportunity, never quite got healthy, but he was someone that just going down to Chargers training camp and just, I definitely think I hear more about the teams in LA here because it's the local teams. Like they always seem to think that he could be a baller. And it finally happened to him once Brandon Staley got there with the different coaching staff. So I'm in on him. I would like if the Patriots, for instance, who need linebackers, signed him, and I doubt they'll be signing linebackers in free agency, but I would be pumped for that. And to me, he would be a great signing. And maybe the Chargers keep him because I think they like him and they have a ton of cap space.
Yeah, Bobo, I kind of like hearing that. Potential sleeper, Kyzir White. These are the sorts of dudes that we want to buy low on typically.
He's like a Campbell to me. If he ends up in the right spot, he could have a monster year.
That was kind of my thinking as well, is potential new situation, emergence. He's not going to cost you a lot. I mean, what would Kyzir White cost you if he's not on your waivers?
A
third round. Yeah. Third round pick.
A mid-round pick, right?
Yep.
So any interest in Kyzir White, especially if he lands in a good situation, Bobo?
Oh, absolutely. And Kyzir White has kind of shown some small samples of even like 2019, 2020. You see this guy play and Gus Bradley has ruined so many linebacking careers.
I'm so excited he's now the Colts defensive
Right?
coordinator. That has my piss all hot right now.
I mean, he did, to defend the man, he did have Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright like at their peaks.
That's true.
That
Although
is true.
early, but maybe they made him more than the vice versa.
Oh, for sure. He was coasting there. He wasn't working. He was just
like,
on cruise control.
Guys, take care of this for me, please.
And even in the heights of the pandemic in 2020, we had Mark Sessler on, and I remember finishing the show talking about how much I love Isaiah Simmons, but the player I was most excited to see that year was Kenneth Murray. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Chargers maybe move on from Murray, because Staley has not sounded very optimistic when talking about Kenneth Murray. And you got to think the prior regime was the one who drafted Kenneth Murray.
That's
with
right.
Anthony Lynn. It was not a Brandon Staley type of pick. So anyways, yeah, Kyzir White, I'm super, super interested in. Same as Foye. I'm bring Foye to me too. I don't care how muddy his PFF stats are. This is where, and Gregg understands, where IDP and NFL divulge. Hey, if I can get some muddy, stats on the board, I don't care how I get them. Sometimes those are the cheaper ones to go get.
If you're trying to buy Foye, just send over the screenshots of his decreasing PFF grades every year.
Yeah, I even remember.
This guy sucks.
I remember when Foye was tagged to be the next like Deion Buchanan. Like kind of like athletic, could do it all. And Deion Buchanan just never turned into anything. And people were kind of pegging that early Foye type career to that. But he's kind of turned it around. He's just still kind of whatever. Gregg got all these guys accurately ranked is what we're finding out.
Yeah, that's spot on.
It's just hard to evaluate a lot of these linebackers, It's like, I mean, he's a linebacker. He racked up a lot of tackles on a really bad team. And he was good at he was good at forcing fumbles. I remember he was really good at that specifically. But yeah, I mean, you never know with a lot of these guys. I do like White better than Foye.
Yeah,
I'm definitely going to you guys next year before I do my rankings.
Yes.
We'll help you sort through these defensive guys.
We'll fly you in, Greg. You can sleep in the Sode Shack.
That's right. We got bunk beds out here.
Where are you guys at? You said you're in the South. I thought you were in Indianapolis. You're Colts fans.
We're in Bowling Green, Kentucky, so about an hour north of Nashville.
We'll bring you in, get you some fried chicken, take you to a Western Kentucky game,
get you some
play
sweet tea.
Golf,
Yeah,
and send you back to LA fat and happy.
Yeah, we'll send
you back. The only time I've been in Kentucky is flying home from Cincinnati. That doesn't really count.
You were like, I can't stay here long. I can get out of this hellhole.
Get me away from these people. All they do is eat fried chicken.
Speaking about things we don't know about, let's let Greg talk about some safeties, because I don't know where a lot of these guys are going to go.
This is a tough class because you've got some big names here. And I want to start with the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, because I want to read this from Gregg's blurb, just word for word, because I thought it was so cool. This is my second year making this list without my great friend Chris Wesseling, and I heard his voice so clearly after I initially ranked Mathieu lower. It's hard to put a price on the intelligence, competitiveness, and coverage ability Honey Badger brings, but those traits explain how he's set. And this was the part that I loved, Gregg, because I hadn't thought about this, but those traits explain how he's set to get the third big long-term deal of his career, despite being an undersized safety drafted in the third round. Wes was early to see Mathieu's ferocious, versatile style for the transformative force that it was. Like so many people who crossed paths with Wes over the years, Mathieu returned the love. So it makes sense why you have him at 6 overall on your list. A lot of great qualities laid out there as to what makes him so special. But I have to ask, at this point in his career, what does Honey Badger have left in the tank, Gregg?
I think he'll have a pop-up year. He's a instinctive player to me that last year might have been thinking about the contract a little. That's what I think the Chiefs all but alluded to it. Maybe not going to make that big hit with a big running back in the hole in like week 16 or something. Let's get to the playoffs and then really let it go. Let's keep our body healthy until the end. And so I think that was a factor. And I also think he's someone that could be rejuvenated going into a new system where he is a leader again. And he's been a little up and down in his career, but the ups have been so high. And the reason he's so high and he ended up going high out of those safeties, because there's so many good safeties, is I think you know what you're getting in terms of the intelligence, the leadership, everything like that from a real NFL perspective. It's like you're getting that for a couple years, and that's like a very safe thing for a coach to be adding to your team. And I think he can still do some playmaking. It's not like he was moving poorly or anything like that. His big plays tend to come in streaks, but I would buy in, because you talk to people, anyone that's ever been with him, like in every locker room, he's sort of transformed it. Even in Houston, like those Houston coaches, like that 1 year in Houston where he ended up leaving for Kansas City after, like they loved him. So to me, that's something where he probably has more real world value than you see on the stat sheet.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bobo, kind of like Bobby Wagner, when you bring in a Honey Badger, you're bringing in the man and the player.
Yeah.
He's not that old either, by the way.
Yeah,
he's been
29.
around forever.
Yeah, it feels like he's been in the
he's
league.
29. That's a young
like,
man.
Yeah, it's like
he's the same age as Devondre Campbell. Like, it does not feel
Wow.
No, it feels like he should be like in his mid-30s at this point. But Bobo, where could you see as some good potential landing spots for Honey Badger?
And I don't know, something that makes me think about with Honey Badger, and I kind of forgot about. I'm glad Greg brought up the Houston Texans year. Honey Badger's always kind of been with a strong coach. Started out with Bruce Arians in Arizona, and then was with Andy Reid for a good stretch. And I don't know. I agree with you, Greg. I think he is good for locker rooms. But how much, Honey Badger has been through some stuff in his life, and how much does he need to be tied to a coach who's going to appreciate him? You put him with a younger coach and bring him in. I don't know. I can't really peg a landing spot right now. As blank as that, sounds.
Well, who has a vision for him as a player? They sort
Sure.
of built the secondary around him, and that is hard to find. Like to me, the Patriots tree, and there's less of them now without Flores. But to me, the Raiders and the Patriots would make a lot of sense, at least to start. Devin McCourty's a free agent, by the way.
Yeah, and two teams that Bobo had written down there, Addy, that intrigued me at least, the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
This is a team that has long lacked that strong, presence at safety. And then would he be a good pairing with Derwin James potentially?
I mean, that's what's great about Honey Badger. He's just so versatile. If you look at his career usage, he's played 4% of his snaps at the defensive line, 26% of his snaps have come in the box, 21% of his snaps have come at free safety, and then the other 45% have come in the slot. Wow. So I mean, you just use this dude wherever.
The slot? Really?
The slot, yeah. I mean, he's been primarily a slot guy.
I've got it. Baltimore.
Ooh, now that would be nice.
He would be great there.
Harbaugh.
That'd be perfect.
Would appreciate him.
Yep.
Their linebackers have been bad.
You got Deshaun Elliott, get him out of there.
Absolutely.
You still got Chuck Clark. You've got Marlon Humphrey. You've got Marcus Peters. I like that. That could be a good fit.
I could totally see that. It's the type of guy they sign to. And Deshaun Elliott, who I think they love, is a free agent and coming off an injury, but that would be an upgrade.
Yeah, so this was the big name here, Addy. And Honey Badger's always been one of those players, kind of like a Minkah Fitzpatrick, that the name, the big flashy name, doesn't necessarily translate to like IDP glory, right? So do we like Honey Badger going to a new situation for IDP purposes in 2022?
I think so. I mean,
as like your safety two, maybe?
Yeah, that's fine.
As long as you're not taking this guy as like your safety one.
He's never been a big tackle guy, right? He's a guy that's going to get like 75 to 80 tackles, maybe.
You don't have to be nice just because I ranked him high and he tweeted nice things about Chris and stuff. You can give your full evaluation.
Okay, yeah. Finally, we can just
trash.
Trash. Get maybe a
this
4
guy
for him.
is scum.
Yeah, I don't know. I think as long as like sort of like a Minkah, I see them kind of similarly as far as like great NFL players. For IDP, you just need to have it like the Podfather always says, we don't hate players, we hate ADPs.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't hate Honey Badger or Minkah or any of these guys.
Minkah was really good for IDP.
As long as you've got him in the right spot in your roster, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as he's still being used in this way, like if he's being used in that way, he's being, he's towards the line of scrimmage, he's in the backfield making plays. As long as he's still used like that wherever he goes, he'll be.
You're probably not getting 2015 Defensive Player of the Year candidate Tyrann Mathieu. That's probably not happening again.
Yeah, probably not. But I think you can still get, like Bobby Wagner, a productive leader for your team that can be a plus player overall.
I really want him to go to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah, that was beautiful, Bobo.
Thank you.
If
You're
this
welcome.
happens, we're buying you a fried chicken dinner.
Can't wait.
So, Greg, we'll get you out of here on this. You had 2 players that you specifically wanted to talk about, Uchenna Nwosu and then Justin Reid. And so I'm curious here because your write-up, injuries, he was benched for disciplinary reasons. The 2021 season went south for Justin Reid. So what is it about Reid that has you intrigued now as he's set to hit free agency?
Well, if I was GM, he would be exactly the type of guys that I would go after, which is, young guys in their second contract coming off a low that you're buying low that's shown great production. It's kind of like a college prospect who had a bad senior year but was like great sophomore and junior year. Like those years count. And Justin Reid in his rookie year and his second year, and I remember talking about it with Wes, like he was awesome. Like, and he showed he had that skill set. That Houston's been a mess. Even though Cully suspended him, Lovie Smith, who was his coordinator, we had him on the podcast, and he actually went out of his way to mention how much he liked Justin Reid and liked him I think he hated losing. Like he won the Ed Block Courage Award there one time. Like sometimes losing and being in a terrible situation, you don't end up not being that great an employee, but that's maybe not that bad of a thing if it's an NFL player and you want like a winning type of player. And he is just a missile and can fly all over the place. And he's shown it. He's still young. And so he was someone in a deep safety class. I mean, these guys are going to get undervalued because there's so many of them. Jordan Whitehead, PJ Williams is kind of fun. Like Xavier Woods was cheap last year. He'll be cheap again. These are like decent starters, but Reid's the one out of those that it's like, you might get a Pro Bowler at like a huge discount. I think he could still have that sort of pop off type of season.
Bobby, this is why we love having guys like Greg on the show, because they can point out, hey, don't forget about Justin Reid. Maybe not the most relevant name for IDP, but new situation, fresh start, could be in for a big season in 2022.
Yeah, I can tell Greg's played IDP in his career. He said if I was a GM, I would go and buy the dip.
Buy the dip. That's right.
Go get Justin Reid before. We've already seen it before, seen what he's done. He's had a low year, not really paid attention.
I mean, I'm not an idiot here. Buy the dip. Come on.
Very, very bright. But I forget Justin Reid's only 25 years old.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
Addy, where's he going?
I don't know, but I mean, I'm with Greg. I mean, I'm a big fan. I mean, if you look at the PFF numbers, I mean, yeah, those first 2 years, he was in the 70s, 75.2 overall PFF grade is his rookie year, 76.7 the next year, and then it dips when it gets toxic there, right?
Yep.
60.7, 50.8 this past year.
So, rough, but bad situation.
Yeah, I'm willing to give him another chance somewhere else. Yeah, I've always liked Justin Reid a lot. I think he's one of the better, and again, one of the guys with the most upside at the safety position.
I love it. Well, Greg, you've mentioned the Patriots a few times. Listeners will know, especially the Around the NFL podcast, you're a longtime Patriots fan. J.C. Jackson, unfortunately, I'm sure you would have loved to have brought him back, but it seems like he's going to be hitting free agency. So who's the one guy? Put on your GM hat, your Bill Belichick, you're sitting on the boat, 12 rings or whatever it's called, and you get to choose one free agent that you are going to sign and nobody else gets him. Who do you want to bring into New England from this class?
Ooh, that's a fun question. I want Honey Badger. I mean,
that would be nice.
Well, see, that's as a fan, though. I would want Carlton Davis, but I would want J.C. Jackson. I mean,
Greg, we said one now.
Little greedy there, Greg.
It's like
save some for us, but
yeah, I'm just saying I don't want to lose J.C. Jackson. I love Carlton Davis though, so I guess that would be it. I don't know if that's a downgrade. Guys like he's ultimately more valuable, I think, than a Tyrann Mathieu, but just as a fan, I think Tyrann Mathieu would be awesome.
You guys have a couple nice defensive pieces there. Christian Barmore, we know you're a big fan. Bobby actually went and acquired Barmore after he heard you talking him up on the podcast.
Only reason.
Kyle Duggar is just a Swiss Army knife type of guy.
Honey Badger is like the final gem there for Bill to get to pair him with Adrian Phillips and Kyle Duggar, both guys that are just Swiss Army knives. Yeah, that would be.
That defense would look insane.
Matt Judon, the 2021 free agency, probably signing of the year.
That'd be good.
Some
you
nice
know, you got Jalen
pieces.
Mills as your top cornerback. It's like, what are we doing here? Let's let's see if we can bring back J.C. Jackson.
Yeah,
that is odd. Why did they not tag him?
Did they have the cap space for that, Greg? Like, why do you think they didn't bring him back?
They don't have a ton of cap space, but I would assume they'll find ways to get creative.
Gave too much money to Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry.
Yeah,
I don't know, because maybe
cap on tight ends.
I think it's tricky because that number's so high. It was 17.5 for cornerbacks, and if you're not offering close to that as a per year deal, which my guess is they probably aren't, then they're just not willing to pay his market value. They know him better than anyone else. They've seen him, but on the field, he's been awesome and better every year. But yeah, I think Carlton Davis is like a true cornerback one, and those guys do not come available too often. Doesn't really catch the ball like J.C. Jackson though.
Yeah, the Bucs just in a situation where you've got a lot of guys that are hitting free agency, and you can only keep one, and they kept Chris Godwin, which I probably would have done the same.
Yeah.
So, well, Greg, thank you, my friend, for coming on and educating us on this defensive free agent class. Like we said, within the next week, we'll start to see some of these deals get signed. So will Honey Badger end up in Baltimore? Will Carlton Davis come to New England? Will Uchenna Nwosu come to Indy? Maybe, as long as we get the quarterback to go with it. But Greg, for those, I'm sure most people have seen you on NFL Network or heard you on the Around the NFL podcast, but tell people where they can find your work. What do you have coming up? Let the folks know.
Oh yeah, we'll be rolling daily shows around the NFL next week.
Nice.
With free agency. We've gone 3 days in a row this week too. We're doing one Thursday, and we got the TV show. I think that airs Saturday morning. So and just feel free to use like poor man's Nick Sirianni as like a nickname here moving forward if you want.
Definitely will. Change
honestly, you're very
Change
small in my
tonight.
screen, so it could be totally.
No, it's a
off,
good comp.
You're like, yeah.
I'm much larger in person.
Yeah.
He's 6'5", actually.
Really? Well, you know what? So Sirianni, I met him. He's huge. Like all these coaches are off. Like he was huge and more imposing and better looking, I will say, in person than I expected. And there's some buzz going around that he wasn't too happy about the coach hotness power rankings, and I don't blame him.
Oh, so we can expect him to maybe step it up this year.
Yeah, maybe he gets the facial hair like really.
Hey man, it matters. I mean,
yeah.
Cliff got the extension because he looks just so freaking hot.
In his house.
And like the James Bond villain lair that he was in, like he had like a publicist or a photographer come out and set that thing up.
I don't know. That gave me chills though when I saw that.
You've been getting chills a lot recently. I think we need to get you checked for some sort of disorder. But Greg, this was fun, man. I can't wait to tune in next week as you guys will be doing the Lord's work, covering all the free agency moves that were happening. So make sure that you go and subscribe to the Around the NFL podcast. Check out the TV show. I love having you guys back in the studio for that. Greg, that show is so much fun. And check out your work over at NFL.com. Like we mentioned, you're on Game Day View. That's only during the season, right? The TV show.
That's like the quasi gambling without saying it's gambling show.
Exactly. My favorite thing. Yeah. Talking about gambling without saying the G word. So check that out in season. But Greg, appreciate you, my friend. And we will be back next week. John Macri will be on with Jace Abbey doing buy-sell candidates for the AFC. So you don't want to miss that. And keep your ear to the ground, folks. A lot of NFL stuff happening. And we will be back 2 weeks from now, recapping all of the free agency madness that is set to come, doing some mock draft results that we're in the midst of right now, boys. So don't go anywhere, y'all. The NFL calendar, it may seem like a sleepy time, but it's not. Stick with us. We're going to keep you up to date on what's going on. Shout out to our patrons and our Listener League subscribers. We love and appreciate y'all. And we will see you all next week.
IDP Show, IDP Show, IDP Show.